Welcome to a DragonLance Saga Order of Ascetics news episode. It is Bakukal New Cult II. My name is Adam, and today I'm sifting through the Arcana Chronos, and I ran across some interesting news. None of it is directly involved with Dragonlance, because there's just no Dragonlance news out there right now. However, there is some stuff that I find interesting as associated to Dungeons & Dragons, and Dungeons & Dragons / TTRPG adjacent news, which you might find interesting as well. So, let's dive into it, shall we? I would like to take a moment before we do and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and my Patreon patrons, and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even grab Dragonlance Media using my affiliate links in the description below. And there's a bunch of them, from audiobooks to novels to games, like role-playing games and everything. So, yeah. Hook a brother up. All right, first and foremost, before we get into any of it, I want to talk about the anthology briefly. You can submit your short stories or your intent to submit by visiting dlsaga.com/contributors. That is this page right here. And of course, if you scroll down, you can see your intent to submit form, where you would then enter in all your information and your submission. And of course, let me know what short story you want to write, etc. So I would love to have you contribute to what is going to be the very first of a DL Saga anthology, and hopefully it's going to be a stellar one. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about membership and patrons. For those of you who may not be aware, and let me give a quick shout out to S. Tempington. Thank you for joining the Whitestone Council. And of course, Ryan, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Members and patrons get weekly readings and monthly downloads, all from this YouTube channel and my Patreon account. So if that is something that you're interested in, by all means, sign up, and then you'll have access to everything that was beforehand and everything moving forward. Now, for all the stuff that was beforehand for the downloads, you're going to have to shoot me an email, because my server, I ended up putting way too many files on my server, and it just got to be way too expensive. And so I had to cut back on the files. So I can send them to you directly or give you a link directly through Google Drive. So just let me know what files you're looking for. You can look in the channel, and it has every one of them there, the membership channel of the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to see everything there. So just shoot me an email, info@dlsaga.com, with what you're looking for, and I will send it directly to you. Now also, you get discounts on merchandise, from bookmarks to mugs to t-shirts to stickers, all that stuff. There's discounts for all members and patrons, and that is just part of what you get for being a member and a patron. So I really genuinely appreciate you guys helping me keep this thing going. And there's a lot of fees involved in that. And that's what these memberships and patron accounts are meant to offset, is the burdensome cost of software, hosting, URL, etc., etc., etc. All right, all that being said, let's get into the news. The first story, I'm not sure how to approach this, but I'm going to do my best here. James Haeck, I assume that's how it's pronounced, hired as senior game designer for Dungeons & Dragons. Noted tabletop RPG designer and community commentator James Haeck recently announced that they would be taking on a new role at Wizards of the Coast as a senior game designer for Dungeons & Dragons. Haeck, who used pronouns they, them, has previously worked as a freelance contributor for a number of official and third-party D&D 5e products, but will be moving in-house at Wizards of the Coast on a full-time basis. Now, I am not one of those people that cares how other people identify with themselves. That is literally meaningless to me. If your entire sense of self is wrapped up in your identity, I think it's a little weird, but okay, I accept it. And however you want me to refer to you is how I will refer to you, out of respect, because that's what human beings should do to each other. Respect each other. I just find it weird when they lean into it indirectly by someone else. So they're talking about someone else and like, oh, they refer to themselves as pronouns listed here. When, in my opinion, it should be the individual when it's appropriate to say, oh, no, I identify as X or Y or whatever. Not, someone else on behalf of them. That's like someone being like, oh, this individual, they're heterosexual, or this individual, they're homosexual, or this individual, that's a boy, or this individual, that's a girl. It's weird to do that. So why would you do that? And yet here, that's exactly what they're doing for someone else. Oh, this individual, Haeck, they identify as X and Y. Why? Why would you even, why is that a thing? Why does that matter at all? Like, they're an individual. Like, you're making a deal out of it when no one should be making a deal out of it by calling it out. So strange. Anyway, I just thought it was a note that I wanted to bring about. All right, so the news was announced on the popular Eldritch Lorecast podcast, where Haeck regularly appears on and comes hot on the heels of a recent promotion of longtime D&D designer Justice Raman Arman on the role of D&D design director. Taken together, it represents a continuing shift in the internal design team at Wizards of the Coast, following the departure of veteran designers Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, with a number of young creatives stepping in to fill the void. So, what can we expect to see from James Haeck? Below, we'll take a look at the details. First and foremost, who is James Haeck? James Haeck is a Seattle-based Emmy award-winning tabletop RPG game writer and designer who has worked for publishers including Wizards of the Coast, Critical Role, Darrington Press, MCDM, and Ghostfire Gaming. Haeck started their career as a freelance writer for Geek and Sundry and later as an editor for Insider magazine before transitioning into a role as the lead writer for D&D Beyond. As a freelancer for Wizards of the Coast, Haeck was the lead designer in the D&D campaign book Call of the Netherdeep, and also contributor to Explorer's Guide to Wildermount, Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. More recently, Haeck has been working as senior game designer for third-party publisher Ghostfire Gaming, and was featured regularly on the Eldritch Lore podcast, which Ghostfire Gaming operates, but will be stepping down given the new role at WotC. I think this is fantastic. Getting new, fresh voices and views into the game, I think can only benefit the game. And the fact that this individual has so much history and experience, and not just WotC, but also for all of those, oh geez, now I can't find them. Where did they go? Oh, here it is. Critical Role, Darrington Press, MCDM, and Ghostfire Gaming. I think that's great. Look, the reality is we cannot just rely on individuals who are 50 years old leading the cause of Dungeons and Dragons, because quite frankly, those of us who are either knocking on that door or already at that age group, you know, we have other careers that we need to focus on. So it's nice that there's a younger generation that's interested in the TTRPG space, that wants to continue developing it out and telling new interesting stories and doing wonderful things with it. I think that's a net positive for the entire industry. Growth is incredibly important in this hobby of ours. All that being said, please, James, don't suck. Don't suck at your job. We've had so many people coming through Dungeons and Dragons with WotC specifically, and the development of their games and their adventures, and they are just not good. The adventures in 5th edition have historically been laughable. So for every one of us fans who still plays Dungeons and Dragons, and in some cases 5th edition 2024 rule set, please, 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 do a good job. We are all rooting for you to do a good job. All right. What new D&D books will Haeck be working on? Not yet clear what new Dungeons & Dragons products Haeck will be working on in this new senior designer role. In the Eldritch Lore podcast, they noted only that, quote, "I'm starting a new job as a senior game designer at Wizards of the Coast, so from here on out, no longer a freelancer will I be. Brought in to do good work under the auspice of Wizards of the Coast, but I will be there in-house leading books starting with some stuff that I'll be excited to tell you about when it comes out or when it gets announced." So that literally is a nothing statement. It's literally nothing. That being said, we do know that they're going to continue development on Forgotten Realms. We do know that Margaret Wise, Trace Hickman are doing something with Wizards of the Coast, so that might be something that they're going to be working on. Excuse me. And then, who knows? I mean, what do you guys want out of D&D? What are you looking for new products in this new rule set? Because 5th edition and 2024 5th edition are not terribly different. They kind of just adjusted some characters and rules and stripped some rules away. It's not a huge difference. So you can still use those old books. I mean, I'm doing it right now with Tyranny of Dragons. You can use those 5th edition books with 2024 rule set. You just have to do a little bit of adjusting here and there every once in a while. But arguably, that's all you have to do for any Dungeons and Dragons books going all the way back to the 70s, is a little bit of adjusting with the characters of the monsters, and you can still play those adventures. It's not rocket science. You just make your adjustments during the game or before the game. So are you looking for new source materials from Wizards of the Coast? Are you looking for their conversions of older systems, adventures and stuff? I mean, what is it? Let me know in the comments below what you guys are looking for. All right, so notably, Wizards of the Coast has been conspicuously silent about new titles in 2026, with no new D&D books announced for the coming year. That's not likely to be the case for much longer, however, as Haeck's recent hiring suggests we'll likely get some news soon. So final thoughts here. Wizards of the Coast has been searching for a senior game designer for the past year, including posting the position on Hasbro website and LinkedIn. So it's not surprising that they pulled in someone like Haeck, who has extensive design experience and has worked with WotC in the past. Haeck is one of a new class of young designers who have taken on senior roles in the D&D brand, joining creatives including Mackenzie de Armas, Amanda Heyman, F. Wesley Schneider, and Justice Armon in shaping the game going forward. What comes next for D&D, however, remains to be seen. We'll be keeping a close eye on the story in the days ahead. In the meantime, below is a video of the Eldritch Lorecast timestamped to the announcement from Haeck on their recent hiring at Wizards of the Coast. So we don't need to watch that. But we do have new blood flooding in as the old guard is fleeing Wizards of the Coast. So a lot of this can be seen from a corporate aspect of, I don't want to pay that old guard salary anymore because Dungeons and Dragons is not pulling in the numbers that we hoped it would or that it has in the past. So we need to get some younger, more inexperienced people in here to take over those jobs that those other people have abandoned so that we can continue pumping out less expensive products for the masses that are rabid hobbyists that will continue to purchase the products regardless of their quality, regardless of the rate of putting them out, etc. Now, that doesn't bode well for the current team on whether or not they're doing a good job or not, but that is a corporate way of looking at this stuff, is that we want to reduce the costs, so let's get in some newer people who don't really have the experience, the in-depth, decades-long experience of the people who had left, and let's just see what they can do. We've already done freelance work with them, so let's see if they can sort of take the reins on and move it in a better direction. But I'll tell you what, if history is any guide on good choices, Wizards of the Coast has yet to make great choices. They're continually shitting the bed. And I'm hoping that with this new guard of developers and game designers, we're going to end up with something good. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. I want people to succeed. I don't want people to fail. And I want this hobby to continue on into the future. Ideally, it would be awesome if I could, if at any time in my life I have grandkids, to run a D&D game with them. That would be amazing to me. I mean, I can still do that with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons no matter what, and I guarantee I will if I ever get the chance. But you know what? Fingers crossed. I want us to all succeed, and I want this hobby to continue positively. See, Wizards of the Coast is what you see wrong with D&D. Thanks for tuning in, ASMR Chess. Thank you. I appreciate you, man. DCBs always appreciate tuning in. Yeah, I agree. Wizards of the Coast is a huge issue, and that's why I find it so funny that the old guard has just fled Wizards of the Coast, and now they're hiring on freelance writers on a full-time basis to be the new game designers. And that can go two ways. Either the people that were there before were so stuck in their ways that they refused to evolve into the newer sort of ways of telling gaming stories or embracing gaming mechanics, or they're looking for less expensive people to do the same shit that they've been doing the whole time. And that is not a good thing at all. And then arguably some people who love the way it's been going are going to be upset if the game systems evolve or change at all, and they'll blame these new younger designers in that case. Again, I'm going to go with positivity in this and say the new guard, please do a good job. Let me know what you think about this new post, and then of course how you feel about Wizards of the Coast right now, now that they're hiring freelance writers to do full-time game designer work. All right, next article up here is PSA. Dungeons & Dragons fans should circle March 15th and May 18th on their calendars. Tabletop fans are in for an adventurous 2026, from the rumored Warhammer 40k 11th edition, hopefully dropping in summer, to the fully backed Vaults of Varn 2nd edition launching in October. There's a lot to look forward to. But one major player in the tabletop space remains characteristically quiet in the final days of the year. As of now, Wizards of the Coast has kept its tabletop roadmap for 2026 under wraps. There are a few concrete signals about what major releases or revivals might define the year ahead. Still, Dungeons & Dragons has never let a meaningful anniversary pass with at least a nod. Oh, really? How about Dragonlance 40th anniversary? It was Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman at a gaming convention that had to do anything for that, and us fans who did it at DL Saga. I didn't see anything directly from WotC, so they definitely shit the bed in acknowledging anniversaries. And 2026 happens to mark two milestones that horror-inclined players know well. I know I'm a horror-inclined player, and I hope you guys are too. Dungeons & Dragons fans hopefully won't have to wait long before something stirs, but in the meantime, they will want to keep two major dates in mind. March 2026 is the 10th anniversary of Curse of Strahd, one of the most influential 5e adventures ever published. Whoa. I think you're either of three minds about this. One, you think it's the most influential 5e adventure ever published. Two, you think it neutered Ravenloft and you hate it. Or three, you don't care, and so you never paid attention. You can't just pretend Curse of Strahd was the greatest of all greats because you liked it. That's not how facts work. That's opinion, man. 2 months later, in May, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft turns 5, having introduced Domains of Dread to a new generation of players. Individually, these anniversaries are notable. Together, they quietly point toward Ravenloft stepping into the spotlight once more. I got to be honest with you. I've always liked Ravenloft. I've played a lot of Ravenloft in 2nd edition specifically, like a whole lot. I had these goth friends, and after work, my buddy and I would always run over to their place and just play for hours in the end of the night. You just drink and play Ravenloft, and it felt even more immersive because their entire home was decked out all vintage goth, and so it just felt super cool. At the time it was awesome. And this was the early 90s. In any case, I'm all for bringing back this vibe of gothic horror to Dungeons & Dragons, and after looking at the art in the player's handbook, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and in the Monster Manual, we need more adult gothic horror in Dungeons & Dragons, because those cutesy pink and flowery, billowy art renderings that they have in those core manuals are vomit-inducing. They're absolutely horrid and not in the way that I would want them to be. So, what a Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and Curse of Strahd Anniversary could look like in 2026. Nothing has been announced, and speculation should remain just that. However, D&D publishing history reveals a few familiar patterns in anniversary years. Ravenloft in particular has proven to be a setting Wizards returns to when it wants to explore tone, genre, and mood outside of high fantasy heroics. So if anything happens, the celebration might as well be Ravenloft themed. Possible anniversary initiatives could include a revised or expanded Curse of Strahd, not a full remake since it's still based on D&D 5e rules, but potentially updated stat blocks aligned with the revised 2024 Player's Handbook, expanded role-playing tools for Strahd and Bravia's NPCs, optional horror-forward variants or narrative toggles, whatever the hell that means, some rules or nods that tie back to the recently released Asterian's Book of Hungers, a vampire-based rulebook. Another one would be a Ravenloft anthology or domain sourcebook. Oh, please start putting out novels again. That would be awesome. Building on Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, this could mean new domains of dread, deeper dives into existing lords, short adventures designed for drop-in gothic horror campaigns. Another one would be digital or organized play tie-ins, limited run Adventure League content, D&D Beyond features, bundles, or curated horror campaigns, and anniversary one-shots spotlighting Ravenloft's most iconic themes. I think that is the most realistic thing to be seen. If anything is acknowledged at all, that's probably what we're going to be seeing. And I'd be okay with that. Cross-media celebration could be actual play spotlights or collabs, creator-led horror campaigns, which would be awesome. Knock on my door, Watsy. And then themed merchandise or alt cover releases. None of this is guaranteed, but Ravenloft has always thrived in moments where D&D wants to slow down, darken the tone, and interrogate what monsters and heroes really are. Played Ravenloft, it's real good content. Oh, in 5e it's good? That's awesome to hear. Not everyone I've heard who's played it feels that way, so it's really nice to know that some people did in fact enjoy it. Wizards likes to give the fans stuff they do not want, though. That's true. How players can celebrate Ravenloft in 2026 with or without official releases. I'll tell you what I'm doing in 2026. On Halloween, I always do, of course, because it's Halloween season. I see it as a season, not a holiday. And I have to start in September so that it can be over by October. I've always tried to do a scary campaign setting, and for the past 2 years, I've done Lord Soth's in DL16, World of Krynn, the Dareguard Keep adventure. Failed it twice, done total TPKs both times, so I'm not going to try that again. I've learned my lesson. I've already done AD&D 2nd Edition's Where Black Roses Bloom, and we successfully finished that campaign. That was a lot of fun. I love it. But I think instead I'm going to do the actual Ravenloft campaign. I think it's like I6 Ravenloft in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rules as intended. And so I've got to look at the dates, but I don't think the Unearthed Arcana was released by when Ravenloft was released, the adventure. So I'm only going to use the rules up to the release of the module. So it should be a lot really interesting. And I'll do a VTT full actual play of it with players and stuff. We'll start in September and we'll go through hopefully being able to finish it within 8 weeks in October. And anyway, that's my plan. What's yours? So even if Wizards of the Coast opts for a quieter year in publishing, Ravenloft is still uniquely well suited for celebration, especially if that celebration is player driven. Its modular structure and emphasis on mood over canon make it easy to revisit without needing new books on the shelf. Here are a few ways tables can mark the anniversaries themselves. Player guide to celebration. Revisit Curse of Strahd with a twist. Play it from a Damphir's perspective or one of Strahd's would-be spouses. Run Barovia post-Strahd. Focus on NPC-led stories rather than the Dark Lord himself. And for Dungeon Masters, use Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft as a toolkit. Build custom domains. Experiment with fear, stress, and corruption mechanics. Reframe familiar monsters through the lens of other horror franchises for inspiration. There's a wonderful individual who sometimes tunes into this channel named Injun Joe, who has sent me information about how he has actually had Raceland Majir pulled into Ravenloft and a domain formed around him. I mean, that would be a really interesting series of adventures of what would that look like? What would Raceland Magir's Ravenloft look like? And would he be able to escape it like Lord Soth escaped it? So, I mean, I don't know how fleshed out he had that, but he does have a YouTube channel where he talks about some of this stuff. So it'd be interesting. Oh, original Ravenloft. Gotcha. Second edition, you think it was? Yeah. Second edition was like the time for Ravenloft because that's really when they started developing it. You know, first edition was just the one module and that was kind of it. So second edition, they started like fleshing it out really a lot, but they released a whole bunch of like intro to Ravenloft products. I think there was like 2 different box sets and like 1 massive book or maybe 2 books or something like that. It was just a whole lot. So, yeah, original Ravenloft was definitely first. Oh, you did that one. Nice. I'm going to have to do that one. I've got to do it. Beyond the Table. Themed one-shots for Halloween or March and May anniversaries, community events, streams, or zines centered on Ravenloft, character-driven horror, written and inspired by Domains of Dread. I even did a, with a gentleman who I used to have on the channel a lot, a really fantastic human being. His name was Derek, and we did the D&D adventure system, and we played a whole arc of Ravenloft with Lord Soth in that, and that was a lot of fun. So Ravenloft has never needed constant support to remain relevant. It endures because its themes are evergreen. Whether or not Wizards of the Coast formally marks these anniversaries, 2026 offers players a perfect excuse to return to the mists, sharpen their narrative knives, and remember why Gothic horror remains one of Dungeons & Dragons' most powerful modes of play. Yeah. Oh, hey, there you are. How's it going, Indie Joe? You took Raceland to Ravenloft. It's called a Black Rose for Takesis. I mean, that sounds dope, you know? I mean, if there's a way, I can't remember if you created a document or a PDF or something for that, but that might be a nice, like, little fan service to share with, you know, the larger D&D community, if it's something that you're willing to do. Scott, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Second edition like to make a lot of books. Yeah, like too many. That's why they went. And box sets. That's why TSR went bankrupt. All right, so that is it. What do you guys think about Ravenloft? Is it something that, you know, sort of took on a life of its own? And is it something you still enjoy? Do you want to see more 5th edition content for Ravenloft? Or would you, just as a anniversary frame of reference, celebrate your own one-shot? And do you return to Ravenloft every Halloween like I try to do? Or not, that's not true. Do a scary horror-based game every Halloween like I try to do. Let me know in the comments below. Really appreciate what you have to say. All right, this next story, you know, I'm going to save this next one for last because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't missed it. And if you still want to tune into this, who hasn't seen it, if you still want to tune in to the rest of the show, I'll jump to the 5 things we need to see from D&D in 2026, and then I'll come back to the Stranger Things so that you can bounce out if you haven't seen the final series so you don't get any spoilers. But I will be having spoilers on the Stranger Things discussion at the end, and I'll definitely let you know ahead of time when I start. So you're just going to have to pause the show and go watch Stranger Things, then come back and rewatch. All right, so 5 things we need to see from Dungeons & Dragons in 2026. I'll tell you what I need to see from Dungeons & Dragons in 2026. Nothing. Nothing. All the Dragonlance content that I could ever want is already out in other editions, namely 1st edition, but 5th edition third edition did a great job of wrapping up the 5th age content that was released with the Saga system. And so if you want, I'm going to be doing a 3rd edition campaign after Tyranny of Dragons, but if you ever wanted a bunch of Dragonlance content, we already have an insane amount out there in different editions of the game. And that's where I pull all of my information for all of my lore videos and stuff. So it's definitely there. You don't need WotC to put anything out. However, if we are going to get some stuff for Dragonlance, which I'm, you know, there's a part of me that wants to see something. And there's another part that's terrified of what we're going to get because we also got Shadow of the Dragon Queen, which was, so What are you going to do, right? All right, so its full slate of new 2025 releases for Dungeons & Dragons source books and box sets is officially out in the wild. Yet, aside from that Warlock trailer at the Game Awards, we don't know much about what's next for TTRPG. This isn't entirely unusual, as Wizards of the Coast often tends to reveal its roadmap for the year sometime in January or February. But ahead of any official information, many fans no doubt have opinions about what they want to see from Dungeons & Dragons in 2026. So, the past year was pretty experimental for D&D in many ways. With the new 2024 rules revision out of the way, Wizards put out a slate of new source books, many of which broke from tradition in meaningful ways. I'm all for experimentation, and I hope to see some new ideas coming in 2026 as well. Looking ahead to 2026, here's what I'd like to see from the year's Dungeons & Dragons lineup for source materials and tie-ins. Number 5, The Honor Among Thieves sequel. It's not going to happen. I know this one isn't likely. It's not that it's not likely, it's that it's not going to happen. But my goodness, do I want to wake up one day and see Wizards of the Coast confirm this phenomenal movie is finally getting a sequel. It's just such a spot-on representation of what I love most about the TTRPG, and I want more. I really enjoyed the movie. Personally, I liked it a lot. So I would love to see another film. But if we're going to see any films, give me a DragonLance live action series, please. Even if I don't get my dream, I'd say some adaptation news in 2026 isn't outside the realm of possibility. Realistically, news about the Netflix TV adaptation could very much happen in 2026. This isn't Honor Among Thieves 2, but I'm hoping to bring some of that same spirit. 4, a confirmed release date for Warlock. Invoke Studios has already let us know that we can expect a full gameplay trailer for Warlock in the summer of 2026. For now, we have only a few details on the next Dungeons & Dragons video game, but I like what I've seen, and I'd like to know exactly when we can expect the game to arrive. As of now, Warlock has a 2027 release window, so we're definitely not getting the game itself in 2026, but I'd like a release date before the year is up. These days, if a game doesn't have a specific release date, I just assume it's going to get delayed. Of course, even a date is no guarantee, but those vague windows get more and more suspicious as time goes on, so here's hoping that the gameplay reveal is eventually followed up with a specific release date for Warlock. I tell you what, if we don't get a release date, I don't see it being released at all. They've canceled a bunch of different projects in the past, and this could be yet another one. Expanded 5e class options. Cool little psionicist image there. With the DCBs, you're right. The Critical Role anime is great. So remaking the original cartoon, I mean, they'd have to do a whole lot of changes. The original cartoon was so sort of its time as far as sensibility and approach that a modern audience, I just don't see would resonate with it. They would have to update it to modern sensibilities, much more snarky, much more meta, stuff like that. But I'm open to it for sure. Like, ultimately, back in the day, most of the D&D stuff, it started in Greyhawk, and then it sort of went out of Greyhawk, and it was in the Prime Material plane. And that's where I lived for my entire 1E and 2E world, unless we visited stuff like Dragonlance or Ravenloft, in which case we were playing a style of game rather than just Dungeons & Dragons. And I would very much like a Prime Material world that's not trying to revive interest in Forgotten Realms, which I have forgotten about already. And if they're going to do Dragonlance, I don't want them to shit the bed, so I'd rather them just do a Prime Material cartoon or something. I mean, ideally, with the right people behind it, I'd love a Dragonlance project, of course, but I'm just worried it's going to be terrible again, and then we'll just never see it ever again. And that's what D&D movies are like right now. They just don't do as well as they want them to do, and so they just cancel the whole damn thing. And that whole TV series that's supposed to be happening, I don't see happening at all. We would have heard something about it by now. I mean, Sean Levy has even said that, he's still working on it conceptually. It's in development, so I don't see it happening. All right, so let's see. With the 2024 rules revision, D&D gave us revised versions of existing 5th edition classes, and that edition, which is now 10 years old, only ever really added one new class. While the Artificer is beloved and is now up to speed for the 2024 rules, it's high time we saw some new class options added to D&D 5e. Recent playtests have suggested that Wizards has at least one new 5e class in the works. A markup for a 5e Scion was part of 2025's lineup for Unearthed Arcana, so we may well see at least this class added in the game in 2026, but I'd like to see more classes join the main lineup alongside the subclass options. My Queendom for a True Witch class, like Pathfinder gave us. I'd be cool with a witch. I love witches. Yeah, I don't know. This is a good question, because what class do you guys feel like is something that you couldn't just put together yourself that you would love to see in an official source material? So if you use D&D Beyond, which I do, it's easier to just have the system's, game data and just roll it into your game that way. So for that reason, what kind of a character would you like to see? And I can't really think of one. Maybe a dragon rider, or like something that's hyper focused on a riding class, So whether it's a griffin or a hippogriff or a wyvern or a dragon or some, a giant eagle, like just a class that is in tune with a specific animal that is all about riding that animal. And you could do a whole little mini campaign based around that, I think that'd be really cool. And I mean, I only think of it because I've been brainstorming Talada's DragonLance 2nd edition Trilogy of Adventures series of games, and they deal with dragon riding in the one that I'm thinking of. So it would be kind of interesting to have that type of a class hyper-focused. And given them some special abilities that would only be and then you could even extrapolate that out to just land mounted classes, but develop out the idea of mounted classes and abilities that would be germane to them only. I think that'd be kind of interesting. A Robin Hood ruined the variety of ranger class for a lot of people's imaginations. Oh, for sure. That would be interesting. A real ranger, like the different takes on a ranger outside of what we have existing right now. That'd be kind of cool. An old school bard, jack of all, master of none, would be interesting as well. I agree with that totally. So there's a lot there still to explore, I think. Recent play. Okay, so I already did that. 2, more robust setting lore books like Heroes of Faerun. And the 2025 lineup for D&D source books had some unique and interesting entries, but hands down, I was most impressed with Heroes of Faerun. This player's guide source book is incredibly useful for reference, both when creating a character and during key story moments for a campaign. In 2026, I'd love to see more source books that follow this format. I'm talking robust, easily referenced lore for other campaign settings outside of Forgotten Realm to help DMs and players alike craft really great stories that feel lived in and authentic. Yeah, I mean, have we seen Dark Sun? Like, at all? Because that would be a really great one to explore. Yeah, I don't know, man. What worlds would you guys like to see source books from? A new fully fledged campaign book. One notable absence from the lineup this year was a new traditional adventure book. Instead, Wizards of the Coast has been leaning heavily into adventure anthologies like Dragon Delves and Adventures in Faerun. These can be useful reference points, but they require a lot of lift to string together into a good old-fashioned campaign. All right. This sentence makes me hate role players. Have you ever DM'd a game in your life? You don't need a full forged adventure tome in order to tell a compelling campaign. That's what your imagination is for, dungeon masters. Like, you don't need someone to provide you with something. You can just do it. God. In 2026, I want to see a new Dungeons & Dragons campaign proper, not just adventure anthologies. Some playtest materials have suggested a return to the Dark Sun. Oh, there you go. Dark Sun world, and it would be very interesting to see what a modern take on that campaign would look like. Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense with the Scion character class, but then let's get some gladiator type classes as well. But no matter where it's set, I'd love a new epic story for the DM who doesn't want to homebrew their own. What do you hope to see in 2026 roadmap for Dungeons & Dragons? Leave a comment below and join the conversation. So I would just say, and I know this is ironic because this channel sees me run a bunch of existing adventures. That's intentional. I have run, my own one-offs, but I haven't run a full homebrew campaign here because my homebrew legs are being stretched in other game systems, namely my own. But playing game systems like In Nomine or my Direlands campaign settings or my Ava Malum that I'm developing. I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm doing homebrew stuff already. I don't want to do another homebrew thing for Dragonlance when I haven't played a lot of these adventures yet. And I'd love to see what they're like playing through them. So that's why I do a lot of modules here. But I hate it when people are just like, well, I don't want to have to make stuff up. Then why are you playing a tabletop role-playing game? The whole point is that it's made up. It's all made up. Where do you think Wizards of the Coast gets their ideas? They either steal it from people who made it up, or they made it up themselves. The player should be an active part of the story, not just follower. Hear, hear. GM to lead you along a story that you help imagine in the play. Yep. All right, so what would you like to see from Wizards of the Coast, if anything, in 2026? Do you want to see another film, a sequel to that Honor Among Thieves? Do you want to see release dates for video games or new video game announcements? Do you want to see new source books or adventures? Hit it up in the comments below. All right, from here on out, I'm going to be spoiling the end of the Stranger Things latest season and the entire series. So, if you don't want to know about the ending of the Stranger Things series, stop the show now, because I'm going to be going into it right now. You've been warned. Doesn't Stranger Things take place in the 80s? Yes. Didn't Vecna show up later in the D&D like the 90s or something? Did they just add Vecna because it's cool now? I think they made Vecna cool now, which is why WotC started creating more Vecna content because of Stranger Things, to be quite honest. And I'm not sure about the exact timeline that it came out, but obviously the show was created with hindsight, the benefit of hindsight, so they can just pull from anything and just make their show, And I don't mind that. I don't care about consistency of when the game is set versus when the villains started existing in a totally made up TV series. It's all make believe, All right, here we go. Stranger Things spoilers. Was Stranger Things real or just a Dungeons & Dragons game? Fans make wild theories as finale ending scene sparks debate over Mike's Dungeons & Dragons campaign. The Stranger Things finale sparked a wave of internet theories asking if the entire season was real or just a make-believe Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Viewers pointed on the way the final scene mirrored tabletop storytelling. Reactions ranged from mind blown to writing sloppy, fueling one of the biggest fan debates yet. Stranger Things wrapped up its 5-season journey with a finale that left many thrilled and others scratching their heads. More than the monsters and endings, one moment has driven fans into deep theory mode. In the last episode, the show cuts to Mike Wheeler writing a story that feels a lot like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Suddenly, people online begin asking, was everything we saw in Hawkins real, or was it all just an elaborate game in Mike's imagination? This idea stretches back to the earliest episodes, where the kids played Dungeons & Dragons and named the very monsters that would later appear. The creators have said the final scene was meant as a tribute to the show's roots, not a literal reveal that Hawkins never happened. But fans are divided. Some see clues everywhere, while others think this is a creative homage that shouldn't be taken literally. The debates have filled forums, social media, and Reddit threads, showing just how much this series captures the imagination of its audience. Theory 1. What if it was all a Dungeons & Dragons game? The strongest version of this idea claims that every monster and event was in Mike's campaign. In the first season, the kids named the Dungeons & Dragons enemies like the Demogorgon before those names appear in Hawkins. For some theorists, that connection isn't a coincidence, but foreshadowing. Spoilers! One fan on X said, honestly, mind blown. So all of this was a fantasy role-playing game? Oh God, this was one of the original ideas of the Duffers. Some fans take it even further, suggesting the series ends with the camera pulling back to the boys at a table and that Hawkins itself exists inside an ongoing campaign. That would be interesting. Look, I think I might actually like that better than the ending that the Duffer Brothers came up with. Because there was like that last, I don't know if it felt like 5 hours, but once the series wrapped up and they were then dealing with the fallout of all the players and all the characters and what did this group do next in their lives and what does this group do next in their lives, I was just looking at my watch, like tapping my toe going, I don't need this. I do not need to know whether there's going to be a regular monthly meetup for character A, B, and C. That means nothing. I was going to swear. That means nothing to me. So I don't even care if they meet up. I'm not watching the show to see how your guys' relationship continues after the show. I'm watching the show to see how the show ends. So why are you telling me about this? It's just so ridiculous. All right. Theory 2, a coping mechanism turned story. Another twist in the theory connects the Dungeons & Dragons framing to emotional trauma. That would be very modern Dungeons & Dragons audience, if that's the case. Supporters here argue that the story the audience saw was Mike's way of processing loss, fear, and memory. Instead of a literal game, the D&D elements became metaphors for how children make sense of danger and grief. A post on social media said, now I understand it all. Everything was just Mike's imagination. The game and the villain were his way of coping with trauma. This version keeps Hawkins and the horror real to the characters, but reframes the show as narrative therapy. That's an interesting way. Yeah, once I saw this Stranger Things Player's Manual fantasy role-playing game, I was like, oh no, they're going to come up with their own role-playing game. That was my immediate thought. I could see that. But, I mean, that would be very 2023 to 2025 D&D. I've watched D&D go from being a hobby to transition into being, intentional use of the word, into being therapy for people who are trying to deal with reality. And look, role-playing is a great way of helping people process, but you should not have that be the directive of the game moving forward. That is a side hustle use of the game, not the core hobbyist use of the game. So, I'm not shitting on anyone's method of playing the game. Play it however you like, in whatever manner you like. That's the best version of the game, the way you play it. But if you're going to be targeting the audience that is the existing Dungeons & Dragons fan base, that ain't it. So the whole coping mechanism attempt at direction for the game, in my opinion, is why the game will continue to go down in sales, not up. Creators say it's not all a dream, but an homage. The Duffer Brothers have responded to this rising theory. They've been clear that the Dungeons & Dragons ending wasn't meant to say events were fake or imagined. Instead, they described it as a respectful callback to the story's beginnings, honoring themes of friendship, storytelling, and growing up. One thing, there's a little bit more on that one. Still, the internet has not slowed its chatter. Okay, so before I go on, I read the Duffer Brothers' really sort of paragraph and a half response to this stuff, and they're really saying that, no, this is just them moving on with their lives. And what's wrapped up within that, especially with that final ending scene, is that, no, you have to grow up and stop playing D&D and go live your adult life. That was how the show ended. Stop playing D&D as an adult, Go about your life. D&D is for kids, as the kids came running down as the next generation of D&D players, and they started playing D&D. So I think that is a horrible idea as a hobbyist of Dungeons & Dragons and this tabletop role-playing sort of industry in general. And it's a horrible message to pass on of, no, this is child activity for children. Adults need to do other things like adult. And no, I totally disagree. There is absolutely a room for entertainment and fantasy as an adult. It may be arguably because we're adults. We need that escape. Some people get it through video games. Some people get it through TV series binges on streaming services. And some people get it through tabletop role-playing. But however you get your fix, and some people get it through sex in sex games. However you get your fix, and it's some amalgamation of all the above, you should not see this as a kids game for kids exclusively. This is a game for hobbyists, full stop. And that's it. You're in your 50s and play D&D. Oh, wait, I play first edition. D&D became an investment tool in the 90s to the early 2000s. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Nick and Nack, thanks for tuning in. Honestly, you felt the series story was wrapped up at the end of season 2. Everything else was filler. All right, that's fair. D&D VR came. That would be interesting. Chris, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. D&D is even more important for adults, you feel like, as we often have less chances to be creative and socialize with others. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really great excuse of getting together with friends new and old, for sure. And it's certainly, and even family. And it's certainly something that I've used as a means of staying connected to family, staying connected to old friends, and to meet and engage with new friends. It's been a great tool for me. Stranger Things is not something you think of when you think D&D. I don't have the fascination with the 80s and 90s yet like people had for the 50s and late 80s. Nostalgia mining. I definitely get the nostalgia mining from it. And it's why I continued watching even when some of the seasons I thought just totally shit the bed. It's for that nostalgia. I mean, just that synth music alone, once I hear it, the dopamine starts kicking in for me. And it's a dog whistle for sure. And it's, intentional, but it definitely gets me for sure. People that enjoy hobbies, distractions from the difficulties of real life, ways to distress constructively. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so another ex-user pushed back against the game theory. Nobody's talking about this scene properly. There was a theory it was all a game. None of that happened. It was just a credits scene homage. The glow of nostalgia and emotional payoff drew plenty of praise as well. One fan wrote that epilogue was made for us. Seeing everyone happy was a wonderful, beautiful way to end it. First of all, it wasn't ended with everyone happy. It ended with everyone bawling around the table after having been happy. They finished the adventure and everyone was like, whoa, yeah. And then they started talking about 11. And then everyone started crying. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that it was happy at all as an ending. It was pretty brutal, actually. And then even that ending was like, well, is she alive? Does she travel like Kane in Kung Fu, going from town to town, solving murder mysteries? Or, I hope they don't do that series. I really hope. Excuse me. Or does she go and just live her life in some weird small town in northern Scandinavia or Scotland? I can't tell where it was placed, but it was one of those, I think. In which case, awesome, I guess, because the joy of life is living it, not escaping it. So I don't understand the whole hiding from all the people that loved you or you love as an ending. That's a shit ending. But what are you going to do? All right. Another wrote, you just finished the finale, and all I can say is the Duffers nailed it. Generational series. On the critical side, some compared the finale to other controversial conclusions. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it up until they started doing the what everyone's going to be doing with the rest of their lives shtick. I really didn't need to see that. But everything else, I thought was fine. With everything, you can pick it apart and you can find narrative issues, plot points that were sort of fuzzed, all sorts of issues. But I don't, there were some terrible seasons in this series, and I was just wanting to see how they would end it. And you know what? There was moments where I had fun. So that's all I can really ask for. Moments of fun. All right, that's it. What did you guys think of the ending of Stranger Things? Do you even care? Did you watch any of it? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you have a theory, what is it? Is Elle alive? Did they just have one game and that was it? Or was this all actually happening and they were just trying to process what everything happened in that last final sequence? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Well, we lived through it. Seems like a trope to see much of the popular shows trying to act like the 80s was a magical time. It was if you were a child and had no responsibility. Reagan, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into the political side of things, but the whole religious right stole the country in the Reagan era, and big business stole the country from them in the Reagan era. And that was when our country went off the rails. So I know people like herald him as a great leader, but that's all bullshit. He sold our company out to the highest bidder. Our Freudian slip, our country out to the highest bidder, and we've been suffering for it ever since. So no, the economics of the 80s was not that great. 70s were a lot worse. Living in the 80s as a kid was dope as hell. It was awesome. The toys, the Saturday morning cartoons, the movies, everything about it was awesome as a kid. As an adult, not so much. But I wasn't an adult, so, I reflect on it as a kid because I was. All right, thank you guys so much. You only watched the season before the big break. Ah, gotcha. Solo Wolf, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, no, he totally did. And that's the thing, Solo Wolf. All people have to do is look at history. That's it. And that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, modern politicians try to spin news, but just look at the facts. And they speak louder than words. But people don't do that because attention spans suck nowadays. They don't like to research. They don't want to look into anything. They just want to see headlines and believe whatever narrative is comfortable for them. All right, that is enough of me pontificating. And that is it for the OA News episode. Are you excited about new D&D designers? Will WotC make anniversary Ravenloft products? And finally, what would you like to see out of Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons & Dragons in 2026? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy, producer patron Azrael, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of the YouTube members. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Sláinte mhath.